Well, hello, Merry Christmas, and Happy Holidays to everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to That Real Estate Show. I'm so glad that you could be with us today. My name is Tim, and I will be your host as we dive into all things real estate. The goal of this show is to be educational and insightful, and hopefully we'll have a little fun along the way. So with that, That Real Estate Show has no artificial colors or preservatives, and do not operate heavy machinery until you know how That Real Estate Show will affect you. So with that, we will get right into it. I want to welcome today our special guest, Nick Tarasovic from Lennox Mortgage Group. We're going to talk about AI and how that plays into the mortgage process and getting pre-approved and things like that. We're also going to continue our conversation that we had last week on the home buying process, and we'll go over a buyer representation agreement. I know for a lot of folks, just saying those words sends shivers down their spine. They get all nervous and they start, coming up with excuses. So we're going to go over that. We're going to take some of the fear out of that form so you understand really what it is and why it's important that you need to sign that. We're going to go over our definition for the week is going to be for closing costs. And then we're going to go over some market data. We're going to look at Southington and we're going to look at Simsbury. So with that, I am going to go ahead and introduce Nick Tarasovic. Nick, welcome to the show.
Hey, Tim, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm excellent. Thank you so much. So, AI is not really a new thing. For decades, right? Every time we call customer service, we get this automated voice and it makes us go through 1,500 prompts before we can get somebody, right? And
Correct.
that's really kind of where I think AI started from, right? That's just a bot that's trying to get you to somebody. But obviously now in 2025, AI has now become forefront in everything. Everybody's making these deep fake videos and there's all sorts of things going on. So there's some good and there's some bad, I think, that comes with artificial intelligence. But kind of talk a little bit about what you're seeing in the mortgage industry where AI is concerned.
Yeah, so like you said, I think we've seen it grown, and I think the growth in the recent times has been exponential and much more public than what it's been maybe on the inside of technologies of companies. But for example, we have at Lennox Mortgage, we're a broker, so we deal with multiple lenders, whichever lender is the best lender for the borrower, in our opinion, right? And these lenders have implemented AI into the tools for us as loan officers and mortgage brokers to not eliminate processes, but also make them more efficient, right? So for documentation or income calculation, a lot of these lenders and there's tools now on the internet, obviously, that we can use to just tighten up the process. So there's no mistakes when we're going through underwriting. It doesn't replace relationships with the borrower or, that feeling that you get, obviously, when you get your first house or talking to a loan officer that's talking you through the process, but it's making that process faster, which is making deals close faster and much more efficient, right? Without any issues.
Exactly. So now as a mortgage broker, talk about that a little bit because maybe people don't really understand what that means. So
Sure. So, when you're going through the mortgage process, and if it's your first time or second time or third time, a lot of verification happens, right? Through your job, through income, through credit, looking at your bank statements, right? And years ago, and still today, some lenders, but years ago, that always used to be seen through a human lens. Now we can use AI to calculate your income correctly without mistakes, scan bank statements much faster to look for any issues for a large deposit. As an example, large deposits are, a big red flag if you're looking to get a mortgage. So it just speeds up those processes so we can focus on everything else in the deal and then also making sure that it goes smoothly.
So now what would be something that would cause someone to have a little apprehension when it comes to AI? Because I've seen commercials. There's this commercial out there where it talks about this company that does your pre-approval through AI. And it seems like they want to cut out that, like you said, that personal relationship with that mortgage lender. So talk a little bit about that.
I think one of the things for me personally too, using AI is trust. It's this engine that you can put any question into it, and you've seen online where people have challenged ChatGPT, and some of the answers that have come out are a little suspect. So you always have to take your knowledge as a loan officer, put you at the forefront of compliance and making sure you're doing the right thing for the client in the forefront. And I'm not sure if AI fully has that, right? Also, as an example, we can calculate your income, right? But I don't know if AI can talk to a borrower right now and say, and get when they're talking to them, say, hey, yeah, everything looks great with your income. And the borrower says, hey, by the way, I'm thinking about getting a new car next week. Don't get a new car next week. No
Oh
new
my gosh, no.
finances. So,
Don't-
I think it's a great tool to check, and I think it's going to grow more, right? So, for example, there's a couple of lenders right now too that are using it for appraisal approvals and appraisal acceptances. So that's great because they can take a bunch of data to simple it down and analyze it very quickly, right, from an underwriting perspective. But it's never going to have that sense, I don't think, of when you're talking to a borrower and you can sense them being nervous and calming them down, or
Mhm.
they say, hey, I had a rough day at work today, I'm thinking about quitting, things like that. I don't think it can take the human aspect out of that relationship, because to me, and for us at Lennox, and for you probably as well, it's a relationship. Every deal is not just a deal, it's not a number,
Yes.
it's a person that you meet, and you're having a relationship with them and hopefully guiding them to the finish line.
Yeah, that 100%. I think you nailed it exactly right on the head, because you have to have that connection with a mortgage lender or your realtor or whatever. You can't just rely on AI for everything. Yeah, it's great. Like I said, there's some good and some bad. Speeding up the process is definitely a big plus. But
Mhm.
there's some times when maybe you need to contact your mortgage lender on a Saturday, and who you going to call if you're doing it through some AI bot? You don't have anybody to call. You don't know who you're talking to. And even with some of the bigger companies, you go through one person through one part of the process, and then gets handed off to somebody else, and then so you never really know who's working on your file. And so definitely, I mean, I cannot stress enough how important it is to have that personal connection with a local trusted mortgage lender like yourself, because when things start to go sideways, man, you need someone to call. And like you said, sometimes you need someone to kind of talk you off the ledge a little bit and be like, hey, okay, everything's fine, and this is how we can address whatever issue that's coming up.
Absolutely. And I'll just say this too. The deals that I've saved and the tougher deals that I've had to save usually have come from pre-approvals that were generated online without a human involved with it. So when I see a pre-approval letter coming through, and one of my real estate agent partners or you come and say, hey, this deal's falling apart, can you take a look at it? Usually the stem of the problem starts with no human interaction from the get-go from a pre-approval perspective.
Hmm.
So it's definitely, I think it's a great tool. I think it's going to keep growing. I think it's going to make things better for all parties involved. But I do still think that you need that experience and also that human aspect to make sure that the deal and the people that are involved have a great experience.
Right. We all love easy and convenient, but sometimes there's a trade-off there. So it's nice to have someone that you can reach out to on a Saturday or a Sunday and know that they're going to pick up their phone and answer the call.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree.
So now tell me what's going on at Lennox. Do you guys have any special products that maybe no other person is offering, or do you have any special deals going on right now with rates? I know, so rates have come down. Man, that's a big surprise, right? October,
Hmm.
November, December. I don't think anyone was expecting the December rate cut, so that was
Yeah,
awesome. And
absolutely.
from what I hear, I think the Fed is even projecting that through next year, they're going to still continue to drop rates by a whole point by the end of next year. So that's amazing. Everyone who's been kind of sitting on the sidelines waiting for these rates to come down, I think maybe this should kind of start to generate some excitement. But what's going on with at Lennox?
I think we don't have. I don't know if we have any super special products going on. I just think that we have strong relationships with our lenders. Right, we have over 100 lenders that we deal with. I would say narrowing that down to be realistic, it's more 10 to 15 lenders, wholesale lenders that we deal with on a daily basis for our loans and products, and they're
Mhm.
always trying to give us products and take advantage of not only giving first-time home buyers the best rate and the best prices that they can, but also, if you're looking to do a home equity loan or you're looking to do a DSCR loan, a lot of those products are getting stronger now, especially DSCR. We've been seeing a lot of that too. Um, so it's just allowing you to use real estate and mortgages as an investment tool for your future, which is
Mhm.
great.
So now, so just for the viewers who may not be familiar, what is DSCR?
Yeah, so DSCR loan is essentially an investment loan, right? Where you can be an investor and you can't be a first-time buyer, but you can be an investor and say you'd like to buy a property and rent it out, right? That loan looks at the income potential of the property itself and not your income as a borrower. It looks at your credit score, but it looks at the income. So it takes the potential rent of that property and it has a ratio of what that mortgage payment would be with that rent. And if it's over a certain ratio, depending on the lender, you can buy that property and use that rental income as the qualification and not your income, which is a great tool if you want to start adding to your portfolio, and add more portfolio and properties to your whole overall aspect of gaining and growing in real estate, which is great.
All right. So there you go, viewers. You've heard it from Nick. If you're looking to start in real estate investing and you're not really sure where to start, give him a call, shoot him an email. His information is there scrolling across the bottom. So yeah, Nick has definitely got a wealth of information and he can help guide you through the process. So, hey, listen, Nick, thank you so much for coming on the show. I want to wish you and your family a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And we'll have to have you on the show again, maybe sometime next year, and we'll dive a little bit deeper into that investment strategy.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Tim. I appreciate it. And Merry Christmas to you and your family too.
All right. Thanks so much. Man, Nick is awesome. He's got all the information that you need. And wow, good stuff there. Good stuff about AI. I love it. So as we were talking last episode about the home buying process, really in that snapshot, I kind of only gave you those first 6 steps really is only the first half. So, getting your finances together, finding out what, your likes and your dislikes, what your needs and your wants, the location where you want to buy, and, finding an agent. So that's really just the first half. So I wanted to kind of expand on that a little bit. And I wanted to use this particular graphic last time, but I couldn't figure out a way to do it. So I kind of had to play with it. And so I could get all 9 points here on the screen. So like we talked about before, that first part, building your team, getting your mortgage lender in place, getting your realtor in place, getting your closing attorney in place. Here in Connecticut, if you're not aware, we use closing attorneys. We don't use a title company or anything like that. Some states do. Some states don't do it through their attorney. They do it through a closing company, a title company. But here in Connecticut, we use our attorneys to do that. You want to check your score. You want to make sure your credit score is where it needs to be. And a lot of people get hung up on credit score because they think, oh, well, my credit's not really that great. I can't qualify for a mortgage. Well, you don't really know that until you speak to a mortgage lender, because with some FHA loans, you can have a credit score as low as 580 and still get approved. Now, obviously, with that, the caveat is that the higher your score, the better interest rate you're going to get. But it does not necessarily preclude you from being able to get a mortgage if your credit score is, say, under 600. Saving, number 3 there says boost your savings. That's important because you're going to have things that are going to come up that you're going to need to budget for. Your closing costs, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Even just like your earnest money deposit. Earnest money deposit is part of the down payment. And what we do with that is we give that to the seller up front, and that shows that you're a ready, willing, and able buyer, that you are serious about completing the transaction. You're not just, wishy-washy, but, you're committed to seeing the process through to the end. So that's part of your down payment. So knowing your numbers, again, we talked about that before. How much house can you afford comfortably? Taking into consideration things like taxes and insurance and PMI. That would be something that you would have to factor into, especially if you're going FHA, which is a government-backed loan. You have to have that PMI. Some with conventional loans too, if you're putting down less than 20%, you're going to have that PMI. With a FHA loan, that stays there for the life of the loan. So if you ever wanted to get that off of there, you just have to refinance when you get to a certain point when you can refinance. But with, say, a conventional mortgage, say you only put down 10%. So you have to just pay that PMI until you get to that 20%. And so, like, for example, say it's about 11 years or so. So on a 30-year mortgage, it would probably take you 10, 11, maybe 12 years to get to that 20% mark. where that PMI would then come off. And sometimes they do it automatically, but usually you have to kind of stay on top of your mortgage lender and ask them to have that removed. So then again, going house hunting, right? So that's where we kind of ended last episode, with finding an agent, and going house hunting. So starting to book showings and, going to open houses and things like that. So then what happens after that, right? We didn't talk about that. We kind of made it sound like that all you had to do is find an agent and then magically, you have a house under contract. I wish it were that easy, right? I wish we could all just snap our fingers on hey, I found you the house that you want the first try, and we got your offer accepted, no worries. So unfortunately, yeah, that's just not the way it actually works. Going through the process, starting your showings, again, then you find that right house, right? You finally get the house that you want. So step number 6, making that offer. So then you talk with your agent, you make a strongest offer possible that you can, right? So we want to get you the house that you want with the terms and conditions that, are favorable to you, right? So that would be there. So then we get it, once we get that finally under contract, once we get that approved, then you're going to go through inspection and appraisal, right? So we'll talk about inspections on a different episode. We'll kind of get a little deeper into that. What is a home inspection? What does it do? What's it for? What does the home inspector look at? What are they not looking at? So what is a home inspection? What is not a home inspection? Again, I would never try to dissuade somebody from getting a home inspection, but we kind of weigh the pros and the cons where that's concerned. So making it official on closing day, you get a hand cramp, signing about 1,500 documents, and then that's it. Then the keys are yours. And once the money is transferred from you to the seller, then that's your house now. So that's kind of like giving you the whole snapshot of the entire process of buying a home. But here's our mortgage terminology for this episode. And we're, like we said before, closing costs. These are the costs that the borrower must pay at the time of closing in addition to the down payment. And they would all go through that. Everything is broken down for you on a sheet, so you know exactly what you're paying at the time of closing. So that's what that is. So now I want to share my screen with you. I'll see if we can do this in the least painful way possible. But I wanted to go over at least just that first top part of the buyer representation agreement. It seems like as soon as I mention that to a potential buyer, their palms get sweaty, their mouth goes dry, and they get all nervous, and they're like, well, I don't want to sign anything. Unfortunately, here in the state of Connecticut, that's the law. If it were up to me, maybe I wouldn't make the law that way, but this is the law. So in order to show property to a buyer, you have to be representing either the buyer or the seller. So that's why this particular agreement is important. And it's called an agreement. It's just an agreement. You're just agreeing with me that we are going to go see this particular property or this set of properties or any number of properties, either just this one day or could be for a certain period of time. Sometimes, depending on the market, depending on the time of year, I might just do 3 months if I think that this is a hot buyer who's ready to pull the trigger on the first house that they find that meets their criteria. We may only do the agreement for 3 months. If it's somebody who's looking for something very, very specific and has a long list of wants and needs, maybe I might do a whole year. I actually had a client that was like that. She was very, very specific, was only looking in a very specific area and didn't want to own a single family house, was looking for a condo. So, when I would have her sign that buyer representation agreement, I did it for a year at a time because I knew it was going to take us a while to find just the right place for her. Let me go ahead and we will pull up this form so that we can go ahead and go through it really quick. So here it is. It's called the Exclusive Agency Right to Represent Buyer Agreement. And again, it is just exactly that, an agreement. You are agreeing with me that we are going to work together to try and find you a house, or at least show you one particular property. So you can see there right at the top, it says in parentheses, Connecticut law requires that the real estate broker furnish you with a written agreement should you wish to be represented. So in point number 1, the exclusive right appointment, that's where your name goes. So the buyer, so John Doe, appoints and it would actually be the broker, not me, the agent. So in this case, it would be William Ravis Real Estate as buyer's exclusive real estate broker to assist buyer to locate and purchase or exchange real property acceptable to buyer, and generally described as, and then this blank is where that property address would go. So say you called me up and you said, Tim, I want to go see 123 Main Street, and that's the only house that I'm interested in seeing right now. Can we make that happen? Absolutely. This is where that would come in. I would put your name there at the top, and on that second line, I would put that address of that one particular house that you are looking to see. Number 2 is the term of the agreement. As I just mentioned before, sometimes we would do it for 3 months if it's a hot market and you think you're going to find something really quick, or we could do it for 1 day. If you really just want to see just this one property, you're really not ready to commit to working with just one agent. Maybe, you're still interviewing agents, but this one just happened to come up and you just really wanted to see it. We could literally make this agreement valid for just 1 day. So it would put the effective date would be like, say, from today, it would say this agreement is in effect from 12/20/25 through midnight on 12/21. So that would literally give us 1 day to look at that one property. And then it says, unless the buyer client is represented by a broker in a pending transaction with a valid purchase agreement, then this representation agreement will automatically extend through the closing and settlement date of that pending transaction. That means, so you go see the house, you fall in love with it, you say, you know what, Tim, I want to write an offer today on this house. We write the offer, and then we go from there through the process, say your offer is accepted, et cetera, go through closing. Buyer certification, number 3, you would initial here, and all it says is that buyer certifies that buyer has not signed an agreement and agrees to not sign an exclusive right to represent buyer or exclusive agency right to represent buyer with any other brokerage firm. Translation, it just means that you're not already working with another agent. So you are certifying that, no, I have not already signed this agreement with somebody else, and so that this would be a valid agreement that we would make together. Because if you're already being represented by somebody, you should be contacting them to go see the house. You shouldn't be contacting another agent. I hear these stories where people say, well, I didn't want to bug my agent on the weekend. They're your agent. That's what they're there for. You're not bugging them. That's their job. So if you want to go see a property, don't waste somebody else's time because you're already represented by an agent. Call your agent and have them show it to you. So that's what that is talking about there. And then this is probably the part that I think gives people nightmares. And this is section 4, talking about the fees. Now it says here in big, bold, black letters, the amount or rate of real estate broker compensation is not fixed by law. It is set by each broker individually and may be negotiable between you and the broker. There is no customary or industry standard real estate broker fee or compensation. I don't know why that's so complicated for people or why it gives them such agita, but it's right there in big, bold letters, so you can't really miss it. And what that means is if I say to you, I would love to work with you, and my fee for that is 3%. If you don't like 3%, we can negotiate that. If you say, well, I'd rather only pay 1%, and I would say, okay, well, good luck, and I hope you find an agent who will work for 1%. Because let's be honest, right? Real estate agents need to make money. That's why we're in this business. This is not a charity. This is our career. This is what we've chosen to do as our profession. And so, we deserve to be compensated for the time and effort that it takes. Like I said earlier, if it's going to take a whole year to find you a house, don't you think that your agent really kind of earned that money? If they showed you 20 houses and put in 6 offers and negotiated and finally got you to the closing table, don't you think they've earned that 3%? I mean, that's just me. But this is what it's talking about. So you'll see that there are different ways that agents can get paid. So you see here where it says number A1 is if buyer is purchasing real estate, broker's professional service fee shall be calculated as follows. And you can do a flat amount or a percentage of the purchase price of the property. So that's where I get that 3% from. We can negotiate that 2.5%, 2%. Again, if you really don't want to pay your agent, I guess you can try and do this on your own. But let's be fair, your agent is going to earn that money through negotiation and getting you to the closing table, which even in a perfect scenario is still probably going to take two months at minimum. Number two, broker earns the professional service fee if buyer enters into a contract for the purchase or exchange of real property during the term of this agreement and all material conditions have been met or are subsequently met. Your real estate agent will get paid at the day of closing, because that will be one of the checks that your attorney writes out of the proceeds of the sale will be to pay your agent for services rendered. Broker may not receive compensation from any source that exceeds the amount or rate agreed herein. So here's what that means. So you and I negotiate, we say 2.5%. Well, let's just say that we find you a house, but the seller is offering 3% to entice buyers to make an offer on their house. I cannot accept that 3% because we had already negotiated 2.5%. So that seller then only has to pay me 2.5% for my commission instead of 3%. Now, what if the seller is not offering buyer compensation? Now, and again, this is all part of that lawsuit. We will talk about that in a different episode. But if you remember, a couple of years ago, there was some lawsuits that were filed against the National Association of Realtors and some of the bigger named brokerage houses, saying that it was unfair that these buyers or these sellers did not understand that they didn't necessarily have to pay these fees. So now the way it's explained to everybody that if you wish to sell your home and you do not wish to pay the buyer's agent for bringing that person to the table, then that would be expressly written out. And then that means the buyer would be responsible to pay their agent directly. So there's a couple of ways that can happen. Either the buyer comes up with the cash out of pocket, or we could possibly even write in a credit at closing from the seller. So even though the seller isn't offering buyer compensation, we could actually write that in where they say they would agree to give the buyer a credit at closing for that 2.5%. But again, all of this is negotiable. So if the seller says no, I won't offer any kind of buyer compensation, won't offer any closing credits, then the buyer is then stuck paying for their services of their agent out of pocket. So is that fair? It's fair, but that's going to, if you're the seller, that's going to limit the pool of people who are going to be interested enough in your house to make an offer, because not every buyer, especially a first-time home buyer, is going to have that money to be able to pay their agent out of pocket. That's kind of why it's built into the sale of the home, so that they don't have to come up with that money out of pocket. So those are the first four sections of the agreement. And this, again, I think those are those first four are what really tie people up when they hear that buyer representation agreement, because they don't understand what it really means. And again, in Connecticut, it's the law. So in order to move forward, if you want to go see property, you have to have one of these signed. And again, you can do it for just that one day, for just that one property. And, you can do it for any property in a certain county, or you could do it for, a certain time frame, but you have to have one of these in place. And it's really not as scary as it sounds, because let's just say, let's go and do this. So let's just say that you signed an agreement with me for 6 months. We'll just say 6 months. And after a few houses, maybe you decide, well, maybe I'm just going to take a break from seeing any houses right now, or I've decided to look elsewhere. Maybe I'm going to look in Massachusetts instead of Connecticut, or something like that. And you think, well, now I'm stuck. I've already signed this buyer representation agreement with Tim. What am I going to do? You can get out of it. So if you don't like your agent, if your agent's non-responsive, if your agent's not showing you the houses that you'd like, or is not listening to you, or like I said, if you have just decided, well, maybe I don't want to pursue buying a house at this time, you can actually have your agent draft a termination that will cancel that relationship. I've done it many times. As an agent, do you like to do that? No, of course not. You want to be able to work with that client and get them to the finish line, but that's just not always the way it works. So you don't have to be scared of the buyer representation agreement. It's there to protect you as the buyer. It's there to protect your agent. Because what would happen if you went to a property and maybe there's a nosy neighbor who just decides to call the cops because they think you're casing the joint? Well, if you don't have a buyer representation in place, how are you going to prove to the cop that shows up that you have a legal right to be there? They're not going to know you from Adam, right? So they're not going to know why you're there. And if you just say, well, this is my agent and I scheduled a showing for this property, I'm sure the cop's going to say, all right, let me see your buyer representation agreement. You don't have that. Do you want to get arrested for trespassing? I don't want to get arrested for trespassing. And also, I don't want to lose my license for not having a buyer representation agreement in place when that's Connecticut state law. So if you find an agent who's willing to show you a home without having that, God bless you, go ahead and go for it. But if your agent is willing to break the law on something so simple as having a buyer representation agreement in place, what other things are they willing to do? Are they really the type of agent you want to work with? Because you already know they're dishonest because they're not following the law. So what other things are they doing or not doing that may actually put you in jeopardy? So that's my 2 cents on that. Market report. So this is for Southington. We're going to look at Southington today and Simsbury. So you can see here there are 29 active listings in that zip code for December, which is down about 10%. And we've talked about this before because of November, December, Christmas, and Thanksgiving. You will see usually a little dip in the market because people aren't listing their houses during the holidays. They usually wait. And if they don't list it by September, now you can see that. We were talking about that when we started this show in November. November 1st was our first show. You could see that there were some listings that kind of came in, and now it's starting to drop off. And again, there's lots of different reasons for that, but typically I would say because it's the holidays, no one wants to have to move during the holidays. They're afraid their house is going to go under contract. They're going to have no place to go, and Christmas is coming. So that's why you would see that active listing number is going down. Same with that median days on market. Again, that's the middle number. Between 1 and 10, that median would be 5. So 26 days on market, which is staying pretty much on par for what we had seen before. And there have been 6 new listings as of yesterday in this zip code, and the median list price is $399. You can see that's actually down 16% from November to December. So this is in Southington. So if Southington is an area that interests you, give me a call. We can take a look at houses that are available, and we can schedule a showing for you after you sign that buyer representation agreement. Come on, I had to throw that in there. And here we go for lastly. So we've got our market report for Simsbury. There are 15 active listings, and there's no change on that. And you can see that the median days on market is 39, and that is actually down almost 5% from November. There are 4 new listings as of yesterday, and that median price is $565, which is up 1.4% from November. So if Simsbury is an area that you're interested in as well, or if you have a house in Simsbury or in Southington and you're thinking of selling, this now gives you some information on what your house could potentially be worth. Give me a call, shoot me a text message, send me an email. I can do a free CMA, which is a comparative market analysis, to give you an idea of what your house would sell for. And then we can talk about strategy about when to put it on the market. So before we go, one last thing I wanted to bring up, because it is the holidays, and I wanted to give everyone an opportunity to give back. We always, this is a tough time of year for a lot of people. It's been a tough year for me personally. I've had some things go on this year that I didn't expect, some good things and some bad things. And, now is always the time where we kind of take a moment to reflect and to really be grateful for the things that we have and, how blessed we may be. And so here's an opportunity I wanted to pass along. Shop for a Cause, introducing Raise Right. So this supports the NHM Realtors Foundation and that's the New Haven, Middlesex board of realtors. So there's an app there. You see it says download the Raise Right app today for free, so you can do that. And basically, what it does is you make a purchase, and then part of that purchase goes to support that organization. So just consider it if that's something that you would be interested in doing. There's that way you can do that. And also, if you just want to do a one-time gift, maybe you want to send a gift to a child. This also supports the New Haven Middlesex Realtor Foundation and also the Foundation to End Homelessness. You can just text Be Home Full 2025-10 to 71777 or scan the QR code there. The 10th year anniversary they've been doing this. This year I was blessed. I was actually blessed to be able to play Santa this year. I played Santa for the Lions Club. I'm a member of the Lions Club here in Windsor Locks, and I was asked to be Santa Claus. And man, I tell you, that was the best experience of my life. Walking in as Santa Claus and seeing the looks on the kids' faces, their excitement, the joy, and having a kid run up and give me a big hug. I mean, there's nothing better than that. So if you're thinking of ways, how can you give back, in 2026, what are things that you can do? Our church, the Windsor Locks Congregational Church, we do a monthly community dinner. You can help out there if you want. I'm sure you can find a soup kitchen or another church, maybe where you live, that does the same kind of thing. So there's lots of different ways for you to get involved. So I just want to encourage everybody, we can all just do a little something to give back. I listen to WTIC usually in the mornings on the radio. They did their 5,000 toys for girls and boys, and I think they made their goal. I haven't listened to the radio in a day or so I'm not sure. But I know they even had upped that because there's such a great need. So just something to think about. If you're interested, there's lots of different ways to get involved. Find your local chapter of the Lions and join the Lions Club and get involved there. So that's about it for this show for this week. I just wanted to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, a happy holiday, and a Happy New Year. And I will see you in January.